Here's looking at you, kid.
I could have been a contender.
You're tearing me apart!
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
The Force will be with you. Always.
Surely you can't be serious.
As you wish.
You complete me.
Shut up. You had me at hello.
Go ahead. Make my day.
You made it to the Third Row Critics Podcast.
Gentlemen, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I'm just glad to be here.
It's great to be in studio. How are you, Jay?
Why are you guys both looking at me?
We've already talked.
All right, you creeps. I'm good.
Awesome, man.
That's it. And that's all I'm going to say for the whole rest of the episode.
Good.
All right, Mitch.
Ben
I'll
and I
just
will
look
talk.
at you from now
Thanks for
on.
tuning in to the Third Row Critics, where we talk about movies and movie-related things.
We do, yeah.
Speaking of movies, you guys seen one?
Just a couple throughout my life.
Yeah.
Any
I've
good
seen one.
ones recently?
Actually, you know what I've been watching lately, which I've binged like a madman?
Talk to me.
Slow Horses. Have you heard of it?
Nope.
When you said that, I was just like, you've been watching videos on YouTube?
YouTube videos of slow, horses. Yeah.
Slow horses.
Oh, look at that one.
Like maimed
just-
horses. Not naturally slow, artificially
They were
slow.
like slow motion, like so elegant. You're just like, no, horses with a limp. That's what I would watch.
I meant like three-legged horses. Yeah. Like horses that were in a crazy farm accident and only have three.
Oh my gosh.
This is not a podcast for kids. I don't know why you're so worried about it.
Tell me more. I've never heard of slow horses.
So,
on the
I've
short
been
bus
on.
every
I've
morning.
been on one,
A
but
short
I've
bus?
never seen the show. A slow horse.
So we have Apple TV Plus, right?
All right, Brad.
Yeah, Brad. All that money, baby. The least expensive streaming service there is. Actually, there's a few shows that I really like on there. There's one called Bad Monkey. Vince Vaughn is the main guy.
All right.
And he's like a kind of like a burnt out, unorthodox Miami homicide detective that gets kicked off the
Actually,
force.
that sounds cool.
It's
That's
great.
right up my alley.
And he's super sarcastic. I'm a huge fan of Vince Vaughn.
Bad Monkey.
But then
I'll
I've been
go
seeing
watch
one.
that.
I've been seeing one rotate through the carousel every time I'm on there. It's called Slow Horses, and it's Gary Oldman. Let me
Be
pull
like,
it.
fine, I'll take a look at it.
Well, I'll pull up a
I
picture
like
for
monkeys and I like horses.
and I like Gary Oldman.
I like maimed horses, and I like Gary Oldman. So, Slow Horses. So, the IMDb page says it follows a team of British intelligence agents who serve as a dumping ground department for MI5 due to their career-ending mistakes.
Oh, cool.
So that's like all it is. So like you're playing through the little trailer for you on IMDb, but basically Gary Oldman is like this in the show. He's like this once super famous and super well-known agent in MI5, which I had to look it up. MI5 is essentially the FBI. It's the domestic intelligence agency in England, and then MI6 is like our CIA. So it's
the
like
foreign.
the foreign intelligence.
Oh.
So
I never knew that.
I didn't either.
That's cool.
So like,
I just honestly thought they were kind of made up just for the whole James Bond series for quite a while.
well, I think it's fair to say that
They
most
didn't
stuff,
exist till James Bond, though.
Yeah, I try to know. I
Isn't
try
most
to
stuff
know.
in England made up.
I try to know a little bit about England as I possibly can.
I know they got beans. I know they got Dame Prue.
they got that queen over there.
They don't anymore.
Not anymore. Remember? We had this conversation.
That's too bad.
You know, it's a real rip is that we trash on England in our other podcasts, so we're never going to get listeners there. Never.
I mean,
or
don't
maybe
blame
they'll agree with us.
there's been
they
a few
could.
good actors and actresses from England, though. So.
All right.
Yeah, like
They've
one or
got
two.
good
You got,
arts.
you got Daniel Craig and you got Rachel Weisz.
Paul Hollywood.
Gary Oldman.
Wait. Timothée Chalamet.
Man makes a mean loaf.
Anyway, so Gary Oldman is like this super once famous dude, and then he's now running this department of it's called Slough House, and so they call them slow horses.
Cool.
But like it's like the rejects of their FBI basically. But it's great. I mean, there's 3 seasons, and I started watching this 5 days ago, and I'm in the middle of season 3,
Holy
So,
crap,
right.
dude. Yeah, I got to go find this tonight.
I've been sleeping so bad.
right.
I've been watching so much of this show. So it's totally worth it. It's
Gotta
great.
steal my wife's password. I think she has an Apple Plus account somewhere.
Shouldn't you just have to ask for that?
Nah,
That's
not
a
No,
cool,
not when it comes to Apple Plus.
not the relationship we have.
that's a weird marriage move,
Well,
my friend.
hers is hers and mine is mine.
I'll tell you what. That
in
is
every aspect.
that's gonna last. Yeah. There's no resentment building behind the scenes there. Anyway, what have you been seeing lately, Ben?
Britannia. Well, it started as an Amazon Prime.
Yeah, didn't it get bought by somebody?
Yeah, and Amazon Prime only has the first season, but I know there's 3, so I haven't really looked too much because I haven't finished the first season yet, so I don't know where to watch second and third, but
Freak, dude.
it's actually really good. It's about the Roman Empire when they first go into Britannia to conquer it.
Is that the new one that's I see everywhere, or has this been out for a while? Is this it?
I want to say it was like 2021. It's got the first season has the character from Yellowstone, Beth. I don't know her name.
I don't know her name either.
I remember.
But then it's got the governor from The Walking Dead, David something,
Foster Wallace, probably.
Mosley, Kelly Riley.
Kelly Riley is Beth. Yeah.
But so it's got them in it. They do a really good job. Let's go back to the
Has
governor.
freaking David Bradley
Yes.
Filch from Harry Potter.
Dude,
and also the dude who...
he's kookier in this than he was in Harry Potter.
Did you watch Game of Thrones? I know
Yeah.
that Mitch hasn't, but he's like he's the king or the lord of like these river people or something in Game of Thrones, and he's like the perviest. He's like he's
yeah.
basically if we
Yeah,
were to pull
he
a
is.
modern day reference, he's basically an old timey Warren Jeffs.
Oh, for sure. But with his own daughters.
So he's got like he's just a
Rough.
you know, he's cultivating a nice family
Of inbreds.
family tree,
Sure.
on purpose.
Family
Let's
sandbox.
go. It's David Morrissey. Yeah. He does a better job in this than I thought he did in The Walking Dead, and I thought he did a phenomenal job as the governor in The Walking Dead. So
Man, I haven't watched The Walking Dead forever.
since high school, what I've seen of The Walking Dead is what I watched with you during our senior year of high school.
Yeah, that makes
So-
sense. Austin and I used to watch it. We'd do family. It premiered on Sundays, and we had family stuff Sundays, so we'd watch it after school on Monday, every Monday, for the first season. And then you realize after the first season that it's just, what are they at, like season 65 now, and they're all just the same first season over and over again.
Sure. That's not
So-
him, is it?
Yeah. So this guy,
cow.
Mackenzie Crook, he played the one-eyed pirate in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I
Remember
recognize
that
him.
guy?
Right.
In this movie, look him up. So his name's Varen in Britannia. Like Google search him or something. You got to see.
Okay, that's easier said than done. All the words you just said are not regular words. Varen, V-A...
V-E.
I think it's
sorry.
Vernon.
V is in Victor. Something like that. Yeah, Britannia. The makeup they did on this guy in this movie is insane.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dude, he looks like Voldemort.
He looks rough.
Like
That
you
looks
can
like a
see
burn
his, you can see his skeletal, structure.
That guy just needs to eat.
Yeah, he's just hungry.
He needs to I guess less or maybe more weed and then eat.
He's like the prophet for the
Oh,
Celts.
interesting.
So any big decision, whoever's crowned king and queen or whatever, is all done by him after he gets high. Like that's how he speaks to
That's
the
where-
gods. He's
that's
always
who
got
makes
his
decisions.
smokes.
That's how
you
Joe
know?
Rogan speaks to the gods.
Sure.
That's not so weird.
Fair enough.
But anyway, so that's what I've
This
been
isn't
watching. It's
anything
actually a
new.
really good movie or
Yeah.
show.
This is nothing we haven't
check
seen
that
on a
one
Joe
out.
Rogan episode. That's all I'm saying.
How about you, Mitch?
I saw the new Twisters movie.
Oh, was that good?
It was actually really good. I enjoyed it.
Have you ever
enjoyed
seen
it.
the old one?
Of course.
Is it just basically the old one but with new faces?
They do a good job. I mean,
Or is it two Twisters now instead of just one?
Actually, 3 because
that's
Twister
why-
2 has 2 Twisters.
that's why the title is plural.
Oh, so it's
Multiple
four
Twisters.
Twisters.
Twisters sisters, like the band.
Wow, that was a good.
But
Good
I
content.
mean, it is tricky to think about how am I supposed to remake a completely different story about a tornado. But they did a pretty good. But they did a pretty good job.
Because they're still
So
chasing them in that,
So
right?
so it's not like it's not directly a sequel, but there are kind of like a couple references to the original. Like in the beginning, they have the, I mean, I'm not going to spoil this movie because it's like 30 years old, so you better see it. But they have like the
Wait,
Dorothy.
no, hold on. When did it come out?
The original Twister?
Yeah.
90
Early 90s?
So that's pre-Y2K. We don't need to have a spoiler alert on there. You can spill the beans.
That's what I was about to.
Oh, sorry.
But
You just said you weren't going to spoil it.
Yeah, you did
You said,
say
go
that.
watch this. I'm not going.
With what I'm
You're
about
like-
to say isn't going to spoil it.
Oh, I see. That makes way more sense.
But like in the original Twister, they have
You
this.
can't look at us like we're the weirdos because you said something weird.
Both of
Can
us
you guys just like
understood the same
understand what
thing.
I'm trying to say right
Hey,
now?
you two idiots. Sorry.
So
Go ahead.
in the original, or in the first part of the new movie, they have one of the Dorothy capsules and contraptions that they go out to launch back up to get more data, but then it doesn't work.
Well, can you explain what the Dorothy thing is?
So in the
Wears
original
shiny
movie,
red shoes and it's chased by a
that
broom.
one. So in the original Twister movie,
I don't think I've actually seen the original.
scientists have this capsule that they named Dorothy after Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz.
It's like a weather balloon, right? Like same concept.
It's basically a barrel that has a bunch of orbs with GPS chips in it that they intentionally get sucked up into the tornado so that then they can track the motion of the tornado.
Okay.
So that they can just collect data from that and hopefully predict storms and things like that. That's kind of the premise of the first movie.
Yeah.
And so their whole goal is to get these things up into the air. With this second one, they kind of run into some different obstacles. And, you know, got to work through that. There's some different dynamics.
Is it just because Glenn Powell's so stinking hot?
Glenn Powell is so stinking hot.
Sweet.
And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well,
That's the only reason why Mitch went to the movie.
That's the
My
episode.
wife has a huge crush on Glenn Powell.
Everybody does.
And it
Give me a
would
break.
drive me crazy, but I get it.
He's pretty good.
He's a handsome man.
He's like the next generation's Brad Pitt.
He can be our generation. This generation's whatever he wants
what
to be.
Timothée Chalamet thought he was.
Did you guys see Hitman that Glenn Powell's in
No, I still haven't seen that.
on Netflix?
No, is it good?
It is really good. It is really good. Super entertaining.
All right.
Yeah, I'd recommend that one.
I've only seen him in Top Gun 2.
Oh gosh, and he was fantastic.
He was
As the
pretty good.
Hangman.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, terrific. All right, let's not. This podcast.
Can we just
isn't
talk more about Glenn
I'll say
Powell?
this podcast isn't exclusively about Glenn Powell. I'm happy
is
to
today.
do a full episode.
Next
about
week's episode
Glenn
is going
Powell.
to be just Glenn Powell.
But that's not
Is he in any
today's
horror
episode.
movies? Let's see if we can get him in October.
I'll bet he will
Yeah,
be
that's true.
eventually. I'll bet he'd do a good job.
We're going to talk so hard about Glenn Powell next week that we're going to get a cease and desist letter from his attorneys.
Or an autographed photo.
Or he'll ask to be on the podcast.
Glenn Powell, if you
Glenn,
listen to
buddy.
this with a week's notice and going back in time to record the next episode, why don't you show up, buddy?
We'll redo it.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll be great pub.
Thanks, Glenn. But we're not here to just talk about Glenn Powell.
Weird.
We're in the middle of our Universal Monster series.
Are.
What is this, number 3? Number 4?
I don't know.
Number
I
4.
don't keep count.
No, it's number 3.
All right. Number 3.
Because we got Dracula and... Oh, maybe this is number 4, huh? No, Dracula's not last.
There's a lot of them. I can't remember the order that we were releasing some of these.
I'll tell you exactly.
Invisible Man.
No, yeah, this is the... well,
It's number 1,
we're
isn't
going
it?
to ruin the surprise for the listeners because we've recorded these out of order. This is the second one, so...
I knew it.
And we've recorded like 4 of these already, so we screwed up. But you'll get them in the right order. And why is there an order?
So there's an
Why you
order
guys-
because
why you guys looking
Mitch
at
and
me for the
Justin,
answers?
Mitch and
'Cause this
Justin
is
have
your
a
episode.
secondary podcast.
Sure, this is my episode, but why? But why are we talking? Why is it in this order?
Mitch and Justin have a other podcast that they record called the Low Grade Research Pod.
Yeah,
So-
you better be listening to
So,
us.
So the
we're
order,
matching
the order.
of this show with the order of that show for these episodes.
Golly.
Man,
Us two
Sometimes-
idiots today, Justin.
The listeners won't be able
Would
to
you
see
two
this
like
because we
focus
don't.
and get on my level?
We don't do video shows, but
We need to start and just have it on Mitch.
Mitch will cross a boundary where, I mean, he'll take a lot of abuse, like a lot of abuse, but he'll cross a boundary where he stops smiling and then his face gets just the tiniest bit more red, and then you know that there's a real problem brewing under the surface somewhere there. So we just averted a crisis.
I'm about to flip this table over.
All we're saying is Mitch can't do basic math, and
Or orders.
Prove me wrong. All right.
Anyway, Mitch, so what are we talking
All
about
right,
today?
so in this second episode of our series that we're doing,
Boy, we're struggling so
we're
hard.
talking about the Invisible Man.
You better believe it. Not just any Invisible Man, because there have been like 30 of those, but
the
original.
the Invisible Man,
Invisible Man.
the original one. Oh, I just needed a big sigh right there.
Who can blame you?
think
You've been
so.
picked on already.
So the Invisible Man, released in 1933, right in the middle of Universal Studios' kind of surge of horror films.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in the middle, but I would say kind of in the middle of like the big ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Because the first... Nice. I'm glad we're finally getting on the same page, guys.
Is getting on the same level as you, just me and Ben repeating everything that we
It's
say
you-
to each
it's
other?
you and Ben agreeing with me.
Oh, boy. Yeah, here we freaking go.
Finally.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Just for that, I'm going to disagree with everything you say for the rest of the show. You pill.
I mean, this is only a couple hours later than we normally record, so
Yeah.
gonna be a
starting
little,
nothing
gonna be
too
a little
crazy.
giggly tonight.
We're starting late, and we're planning to do a second episode after
we're
this,
gonna
which
get
is
giggly.
going to be a disaster.
But so this movie was like the third of Universal's big ones. Mm-hmm. First one being Dracula, and then The Mummy was also released that same year as Dracula, and then 2 years later, Frankenstein was also released in 1931. So they had 3 big movies come out in that kind of kickoff year for them.
That 1 year, yeah.
And then come in The Invisible Man. So directed by James Whale. You may recognize him because he directed a ton of movies for Universal Studios, including Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, and a movie called The Old Dark House. First couple times I read that, I read The Old Dark Horse, and I was like, oh, what a...
Well, if it was a slow horse, I will watch it. If it was maimed in an accident in a factory fire, I'll totally watch that.
Writers for this movie was R.C. Sheriff. He worked on The Journey's End, which was a play and screenplay.
Weird he didn't become a cop, don't you think?
I know, right? Just wasn't in his
Got a name
blood.
for it.
He also wrote and worked on The Four Feathers and Goodbye, Mr. Chips, some of his notable works.
Nice.
As well as this movie, I guess, should note that this movie is based off the book by H.G. Wells that was released in 1897. So he's the main writer for this story.
1897, really?
Was when the H.G. Wells story was...
That's the
was
same year that Dracula
published.
was published.
Really?
The book, rather. Yeah.
The book. Interesting.
Yeah, kind of wild.
Little tidbits. Some of our top billed cast include Claude Rains as Dr. Jack Griffin, who is the Invisible Man.
I don't mean to be contrary, but wouldn't that be Claude?
What did I say? Cloud?
You said Cloud.
Well, I'm very insensitive.
Depends on where you're from, so.
Let's go with Claude.
You are very
if you're from
insensitive.
Utah, it's Cloud.
Yeah, I guess so. He's dead now anyway, so I guess it doesn't
Yeah, he
super
won't
matter.
care. Which you'll recognize him because he's also been in several Universal movies.
Mm-hmm.
He was also in The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which we've talked about.
He was?
Gloria Stewart is the leading lady of this film, the love interest. William Harrigan as Dr. Arthur Kemp. Henry Travers as Dr. Cranley. And Una O'Connor as Jenny Hall. There you go.
And fun surprise, the worst character in this
The
entire
most
movie.
annoying character of
Holy
the film.
smokes.
Her poor husband. He almost dies because of her.
I would have died
dude.
if I'd been married to her. Unbearable. Anyway.
Okay, so quick plot of this movie. The Invisible Man follows Dr. Jack Griffin, a scientist who develops a formula for invisibility. However, this discovery causes him to spiral into madness. As his powers grow, he becomes a danger to those around him, committing violent crimes and threatening society. His descent into insanity leads to his ultimate downfall as authorities hunt him down. Any disputes with that?
No, I think
Sound
that's
accurate?
pretty much right on. I've got a lot to say about how the story progresses in this movie because it goes 0 to 100 unbelievably fast.
really fast. Ain't that the truth? Okay, well, let's get into it.
You got to grab their attention quick with this one, and they did that.
Yes, they did.
So let's dive into a little more in depth and talk about some of the performances as well as the story that they create with their performances.
Right after this. All right, so we're going to jump right into performances and story, right? Is that what we're going to talk about?
That's exactly right. So I think we should talk about Claude Rains. Not
Oh.
Cloud.
It's weird that you only see him as him for the last 10 seconds of the movie, maybe?
Yeah.
So it's a strange thing to act in a movie and also not act in a movie.
I get that, but he
Well,
was
I guess
he was
act,
also
but
acting.
not be seen, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because we'll talk about like the special effects that they did to make him invisible, but I mean that is fair. He didn't really have to physically act. I guess like express himself emotionally like you would normally, because he
Right.
was invisible for the whole thing.
Well, and as we'll find out, he has two modes. He's either calm and nice or freaking the hell out.
That's
So,
true. That's true.
So true.
Like everybody else in this movie, weirdly. But
Fair enough.
Especially,
I think-
what was her name again?
a freaking Una or whatever. What is her name?
Yeah, the
We're gonna have to read Una.
Una. Yeah, especially
Una
her.
or
She-
O'Connor.
Oh no, except she's Jenny Hall in the movie.
Her character is Jenny Hall. Yeah. I think kind of speaking to that point of like he was invisible the whole time except for the last 10 seconds of the film. I think I would have appreciated the story showing what led him into that and then discovering his invisibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like more of an origin story kind of.
Totally. But
Well, and these movies were only an hour long or whatever, so
Right.
which was, I mean, it would have been weird to do much longer than that at the time. But like, this would be a great 2-hour movie.
totally
The
today.
first half showing him getting there and then struggling to overcome it, and then the second half just like the mayhem and manic.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he's so handsome.
He really is.
Cloud Rains.
Gosh, and
Old
they just
Cloud
made him
Rains.
invisible the whole time. What
Yeah,
a shame.
I mean, at the end, we got to see him for
Well, yeah,
sure.
but, like,
you know,
he's sick and in bed and dying.
45 seconds.
He's not dying. He is dead. At
no
the
one's
end.
handsome
Yeah.
when they're dead.
He is. In fact, he was so handsome, and his character is so ugly in the movie that like the personality's so ugly. I remember feeling like, wow, he's quite handsome. At the end,
How could someone so beautiful cause so much mayhem?
so ugly on the inside be so beautiful? He's a beautiful man.
But I think speaking of that, he kind of gave a super unique performance that no one had really done at the time because he wasn't really on camera or seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was definitely a new challenge that no one had undertaken before.
For sure.
Because how are you supposed to? I was just thinking how a lot of these movies were originally screenplays before they were made into films, and how could you even?
I think you've said that weird.
So a lot of these
You said that they were screenplays before films, which is 100% always the case.
a lot of
time.
these films were written for the stage
Nice.
before they became films.
Sure.
Thank you for catching it. Because
I
you're
just don't want to
correct.
get hate mail later.
Because you're correct.
Hey, you freaking idiots.
Hey, your host is an idiot.
You guys were just on Mitch's level agreeing with everything that he said, and he said something totally incorrect.
But how are you supposed to adapt a story like this for the stage? Making someone
Yeah.
invisible on stage, right? So I think it was,
I feel like it'd be easier to do we'll talk about special effects later, but be easier to do the special effects for a film way more than a stage. I can't even imagine how they would do that for a stage.
Especially making him invisible.
Yeah.
I feel like it would just have to be like a puppeteer puppeting a pair of pajamas.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how sometimes they'll do like people dress all in black or mostly in black, and then
Oh, sure.
they'll,
And
like
it
you can see them
represents-
on the stage, but like you
Sure.
can tell that they're trying to do things or whatever.
Sure.
Actually, can I do a tangent really quick?
run with it?
Coolest, I guess, play I've ever been to was on. My wife and I went to New York City, and we went and spent a little time on Broadway, and it was the last performance of King Kong. And
Oh, cool.
if you guys don't know this about me already, I'm a huge King Kong.
He
fan.
loves big apes.
Well, just that one in particular.
And bad monkeys.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true too. Weird. Yeah. Anyway, but the King Kong in the play was a giant puppet that was probably like 30 feet tall, right? And it was operated by like 30 people.
Oh, cool.
And so they had like one dude sitting up in the mouth that was controlling the mouth and the eyes. And then they had a bunch of dudes with like all these pulleys and ropes and big like poles and stuff. And they were all in black morph suits. And they were running around like controlling its hands, slamming down. And at like one point, like the theaters are big, but like that thing is huge on there. And so at one point, it like stamps its two knuckles into the ground and then like leans way forward. And it's like... Gosh, it felt like you could reach out and touch him in the audience. It was unbelievable.
That's
cool.
really cool.
I don't know why I brought... because it was the black morph suits. So, like, you could still see that the guys were, like, operating him or whatever. But I don't feel like it took too much away from the experience.
But it just helps create the effect of the bigger picture of it.
Yeah.
Sure. So I guess you could do it. So if
I think
anyone
that
out
would
there...
be how you have to do the Invisible Man is you just put him in a black morph suit and put clothes over the top.
Put a hat on.
Yeah, I guess so.
So if anyone out there is
Just ask
brave
everybody in the
enough
audience to close their eyes when he's on stage.
Now just pretend with me.
put on these glasses. Let's talk about some of these other characters, like Una or O'Connor's character.
Yeah, Jenny Hall, the wife, the innkeeper's wife. The note I have for her is the inn owner's wife needs to calm the hell down.
I think
She's the reason he lost his shit.
Dude, I got a freaking headache listening to her.
I think that Universal was having such success at the time of horror. I think they were maybe worried about, like, we're really, like, freaking people out. And I almost get the feeling that they put her in to be, like, this comedic relief. But for me, and I'm guessing for you too, she just became super annoying real quick.
Well, and we'll say why. Because she screams. She's like 0 to 100 on how much she screams and freaks out. But it is like eye-watering, ear-piercing, like horrible screaming.
On old technology too.
Oh my gosh. So
hurts
it's
your
mixed
ears.
bad. It's super loud coming across.
Yeah, the levels are way out of
My
whack.
Lord. It's terrible.
I mean, what is it? The first time you hear it, he like get out of here, woman, or something, and
Yes.
so she slams the door, and as soon as the door slams, it's like she just witnessed some murder or something like that,
Yeah,
and that's
right.
how bad it is. But it was like Justin said, it's 0 to 100 that quick.
And she also can't follow basic instruction.
oh my gosh.
Because
Leave me alone,
Dr.
Yeah.
Jack Griffin tells her every time he sees her, okay, stop coming up here. I want to be alone. I don't want to be disturbed.
Yeah, he's
Leave
in
me alone.
He's in this suite so it's like a bar, like a tavern and an
tavern
inn, right?
inn, yeah.
And so he arrives in like during a snowstorm, the Invisible Man, and then he's all bundled up and then asks for a room. So it's like the room above the bar. And so right, but then he keeps telling her, don't
quit
come in
coming
here.
up here. Like, I'm busy. I want to be left alone. Like,
I just want the
nothing.
quiet.
And she comes every 15 minutes knocking on the door.
Like probably 7 times.
Yeah.
And just over and over.
And he threatens her, and she still keeps coming up the stairs. It's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Then she goes and loses it on her husband and makes him go and
That's right.
Can you imagine walking into like a Hilton and then you're like, yeah, this room for me. They're like, great, it's room 212 or whatever. Great, thanks. I really don't want to be disturbed. And then they show up from the front desk like
Every
7 times.
minutes.
It's like, what the hell do you want?
Gosh, dude.
Leave me alone.
Gosh.
she's just greedy too. He hasn't paid his rent.
Yeah, you get the impression that the Invisible Man had been there for like
A while.
like a month or even longer. You know what I mean?
I think that was one part of the story that kind of struggled with this movie was like the timeline of things, because there was a couple things
That does seem to be a struggle for like all of these.
Yeah, well, and
Universal
especially
movies.
for this one, because there was a couple things where it showed all of these things that the Invisible Man had been doing.
Yeah.
And then it was like
The next
the
day.
next day after the beginning of the movie, right? Like he'd been in this tavern for 2 days, but like he's caused all this destruction.
Right. He's killed 100
Yeah, so
people.
there's a lot of like, what was the? So there's a scene in the movie where There's a scene in the movie where earlier Jack Griffin threatens to derail a train and kill hundreds of people.
Yeah.
He doesn't
And
just...
there's, oh wait, never mind. This the one I'm thinking of is once the town people get together with the police, and Jack Griffin sneaks through and then kills the police captain.
Right.
Right, and then
Chokes him to death.
yeah, and then the next scene is like people running through the streets of the town handing out newspapers.
Oh.
They weren't nude.
Wait, I watched a different movie.
Is a different Invisible Man.
Yeah.
The Invisible Man.
We should pause. I need to go watch this movie.
So where was I at there? The police chief is
dies.
dead. People are running through town handing out newspapers with this big headline story of this police chief has been killed by someone that can't even be seen. And then the next scene is them taking the dead police chief out of the tavern.
Right?
So like, he's been dead for 20 minutes, and this is a hot story.
Yeah, the timing's crazy.
They could print that many newspapers as quick as most people can send
people
a text
were
message.
people were apparently awake at 2 a.m. too.
Yeah, the focus of this film should have been on the newspaper industry of this town, not on the Invisible Man.
Way ahead of their time.
Unbelievable production ability.
Way ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Another notable character I want to talk about is E.E. Clive, who plays Constable Jaffers.
The most incompetent cop in cinema history.
Okay, but I wanted to talk about him because he is just the most stereotypical constable that the United Kingdom has produced. You know what I mean? And he says my favorite line that all constables should say: "What's this then?"
Yes.
Every time there's like an argument, confrontation, like a scuffle, he just walks in. "What's this then?"
With the same look that you always see on like constables' faces, which is like that they see crime in front of them and are completely baffled that crime exists and is happening in front of them.
And it's always taken aback and a shock look. Like,
Every time.
"Oh."
I loved him.
Yes.
Loved him.
All right, I get that.
He
I
definitely
hated him
had it.
before, but I like him now.
Right, what's this then?
Yeah. Can we talk about the Invisible Man himself?
Yeah.
Because,
Let's hear your favorite aspect of the Invisible Man, Jay.
well, I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but like this dude, there's no in between for any part of this movie, which we've already talked about. But like, I have tons of notes everywhere in this that like he goes from being a professor and he's turned himself invisible and he can't figure out how to undo that change. And then it's clear that whatever he did to himself is affecting his mind and like making him more erratic
absolutely.
and angry and
And they
violent.
reference that.
Yeah. But like they talk about that. So that's like him trying to find a cure is at level 0. They're like, it's addled his brain.
Yeah.
And that's like a level 1. And then he shoots immediately to a level 100. And so
derails a train off a cliff.
the inn owner's wife, Jenny, she tells her husband Herbert, she's like, he threatened me. You got to go up there and get his rent. He hasn't paid his rent in a week, and you got to kick him out. We're done. So this dude goes up there, and then the Invisible Man strips nude, so then you can't see him, and is like running around laughing like an absolute
Let's hear it, Mitch.
straitjacket lunatic. Yeah, it's literally that. Oh, I just got chills. Laughing just like that, and like just straight up shoving people down flights of stairs and choking people to death. And it's just like at the end of the movie, they talk about I wrote it down somewhere. They made mention that he had killed somewhere in the neighborhood of like 120 people.
Yeah, a ton of people.
Overnight.
Well, that was
yeah.
that was the thing that I remember was when he meets up with one of his old colleagues to be like, "You're gonna help me," and this guy has no choice.
Yeah, he says basically,
just like-
you're going to be my servant.
Yeah.
And I'll murder you if you don't
yeah, if
do
you
it.
don't. He's like, "Here's my plan. And he's not clear if he wants to take over the world or just show that he's powerful enough to take over the world.
Yeah.
He's really fuzzy on all the details.
Those are kind of one of the same.
But he's like, we'll start off with a few simple things, and he talks about like maybe robbing some people. He's like, then along the way we'll strangle a few. And he's
Yeah.
like, whoa, what?
Yes, dude.
He's like, we'll strangle powerful people, we'll strangle poor people, just so they know we're
all
not
matter.
against killing anyone. And he's just like, oh my gosh. Yeah,
dude.
unhinged.
Totally. And like, so like 0 to 100 that it was, there were multiple times during this movie, it was shocking to me that like, so two thoughts, I guess. So like, in terms of the dude he forces, so his old colleague,
Gosh, what is his what is his name? Kemp.
Dr. Kemp.
Dr. Kemp.
So he's like an old colleague, and he forces him to be his new servant or whatever. And his whole thing is like, Dr. Kemp, you're going to do everything I say because I'm invisible, and if you don't do it, I'm going to kill you, and you won't see me coming.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then for 90% of the interactions between Dr. Kemp and the Invisible Man has clothing on, so he can see where he is and what he's doing. But he's so horrible to Dr. Kemp. My thought, and I wrote this down, let's see. I said, he's so demanding and horrible to his assistant. Why doesn't the assistant just shoot him and then be done?
Correct. I know.
Shoot
You
him,
can see where
strip
he
his
is.
clothes off so no one can see the body. You've just committed a murder and no one will ever know.
It's the easiest murder you'll ever commit.
So it's that thought. But then at the end, they get like 100 constables together to go and say, "What's this then?" Around
In unison.
They corner the Invisible Man in a barn at the end. But then, like, it's all these dudes. They've got guns ready. Like, it's an insanely overwhelming response.
Oh, yeah.
To catch one criminal, right? And the thought I had then was like, this is completely appropriate. This dude has killed 100 plus people.
Absolutely.
Inside of what, 3 days or whatever it feels like?
A fortnight.
Like, of course it's going to be the entire town shows up to murder this dude. Like,
Every single one of them were deputized. The entire
yes,
townsfolk.
I wrote, he goes so hard into being a criminal, and then the whole country appropriately responds with insane, massive force. Mm-hmm. So all I'm saying is that I think the thing that the story of this film and the acting probably suffered from the most, on a serious note, was like, I guess, nuance.
Sure.
Because I think it would have hit way harder if they had they showed us level 0, they showed us level 1, and they showed us level 100.
Yeah.
And if we had found out any more about any other level in between 1 and 100, I think it probably would have added a lot more depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you first meet him, you think, oh, he's ashamed. He doesn't want anyone to see him. And it's not because he's ashamed. It's because he's got these terrible plans he wants
And
to
he is now
carry
schizophrenic.
out.
Planning to strangle both the rich and the poor.
Yeah, and he just goes immediately for it.
Yeah.
So pretty incredible, pretty ambitious. Gotta admire the guy.
Well, everybody needs a hobby.
Well, like I said, I think they wanted that attention grabber, which
Totally.
every scene in the movie, someone is dying, just about. Like Dr. Kemp, he thinks he's snuck away and he's gonna go hide in the cabin, and next thing you know, the Invisible Man's like, "Oh, I was there everywhere. I
Kemp."
followed you from the police station. I followed you."
Which I do love that part where Kemp thinks he's gotten away,
Free and
then
clear.
the Invisible Man is just
In the
sitting in the
back
back
seat.
seat, and he's like, "I told you I'd come for you, Kemp," and I was like, I'm freaked out myself.
Yes, dude.
Yeah.
Which is great. It was
I
awesome.
love how the Invisible Man always tells his plan to Kemp though, and follows through. Like he's like,
that was cool.
First, I'm going to kill you, and then make your car drive off a cliff, and then whatever.
Yeah.
Exactly what he does.
Does
Like,
100% of what he says.
That's a power. That's a power
Kemp
move
shoulda
right
just-
there.
Yeah, his say-do ratio is 100%, baby.
at 12 o'clock, I'll be back, or
Yep.
10 o'clock.
Yep.
I'll be back, and I will kill you.
Yep.
Well, bleeding
That's exactly
into kind of what we're talking about there. Let's talk about the director's direction,
Sure.
and where he took this film.
So I really liked that there were a few things I liked in terms of like set design and stuff, and like the ambiance of the movie and things like that. I feel like really hit pretty good. So like the whole scene about the tavern at the very beginning, like the whole thing feels very homey. It really feels like a small English town, like
Totally.
tavern, and people are there to have a good time, get
I'd
out of
go
the weather.
visit. I'd go visit.
It looked like an awesome place
Yeah.
to hang out. And then even like the sets moving forward, I really think that they did a pretty good job. Like there were weird things. I guess this bleeds into special effects for me, but like there were weird things that they did in terms of like the special effects to like make things float or whatever. Like it was clear a lot of stuff was just on like piano wire that they were floating around.
Sure.
Shoot, what was I going to say about the set? Oh, I remember. Do you guys remember the time? So there's a moment kind of early on when a woman runs into her room. It's the love interest for the Invisible Man, and she runs into her room to cry. Mm-hmm. So she goes from like this main room into her room to cry. And then there's like it's almost like a sitcom set because it's like a half wall. So from the camera's point of view, there's like a half wall with a door in it.
Okay.
Right? And then the actors will go through the door.
Yes.
But then the camera just goes around the half wall or whatever. And so it's like so poorly done, I guess. Like the half wall is so close to the door. So it looks so weird.
It does look weird. I remember that.
The woman runs into her room and then the doctor walks over to the door and like is like looking around. Like he can see most of her room through this half wall. It was so strange.
Well, it's like there's this giant, almost like entryway in between rooms, but he decides to use the door.
Yeah.
Like that's what it looks like. And so it just looks ridiculous because of that.
Right.
But I think something I appreciated about this was obviously, and we'll talk more about the special effects because they're obviously a huge part of this movie, but they were a huge jump forward in special effects for Hollywood.
Yeah,
Yes.
big time.
And he had the stones to try and carry this out and create this project.
Right.
And this is 1933 when this was released.
Which is crazy.
So, and the type and the quality of special effects that they were able to come up with really is why I like this movie so much.
Did you guys think that there was a lot of murder for this movie?
For how short it was, yes.
I mean, well, I
For
mean,
how
just
quickly
like
he
how much
worked?
was. So I guess maybe in comparison. So I recently watched 1931 Dracula,
Okay.
right? Which is kind of credited as like launching horror as we know it like into being, right? And so, but in that movie, they imply that Dracula is about to drink somebody's blood. They imply that people get murdered. Even at the end when they kill Dracula, they show like the setup for it, but then don't show anything else.
Right.
And so they're very careful during that whole movie to not show any scenes of people getting killed. But then I guess probably because he's invisible, but like they show people like getting choked out and dying or being shoved off cliffs or whatever.
Within the first 12 minutes is when the constable
all
dies.
over the place.
Yeah.
Like, so it's,
I
mean, it's crazy.
wonder if that was part of why they felt comfortable showing that, because
we weren't seeing someone do it
technically it
necessarily.
was just an actor acting like someone was strangling him, but only one person was in the shot.
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually portraying someone strangling another person.
Yeah.
And so they felt comfortable with putting that on screen.
I would imagine it was probably really shocking for audiences to watch that even still.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this one too portrayed a lot more like, what am I trying to say? Kind of where the Invisible Man like derails the train, so kind of like ups the scale of the murders and crimes he's committing, whereas Dracula like gets specific people.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
want to talk about that train. Sorry,
and
that's
I
why I'm
think
smiling.
I love the train. And I think that
foreshadowed
that created a different dynamic for me, because we're not talking about Dracula, but the individual murders were a little more like, I guess you could call it close to home, like you knew the character.
Sure.
But in the Invisible Man, he's killing the masses, and you don't connect with that group as well.
Yeah,
so I
I get
wonder
that.
if that was also like a different direction that they were trying to take with this one.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Sure.
Anyway, let's talk about that train.
Okay, my biggest beef with the train. The train tracks go over like a bridge, okay?
Uh-huh.
And then there's train tracks that you can switch the track over to. But the tracks that you can switch over to curve directly off the edge of that bridge.
They make a hard left turn.
see,
There's like 10 whole feet of track, and they go from the track off the edge.
They were planning on a secondary bridge. They just hadn't built it
Holy,
yet.
they must have, dude. The city planner must feel so guilty after that tragedy occurs.
It's all my fault.
It's like, we're going to build this. Trust me, no one's going to flip this switch. We're going to be just fine.
It's a safety switch.
Run these trains. We got a schedule.
Yeah, crazy.
I thought it was pretty awesome, though.
It was cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
And like Mitch said, is obviously the train is, a train you'd put under your Christmas tree size, like they zoom in close on it kind of thing. Right. So that aspect of it, you have to understand that's all they had to work with. They're not going to make an actual train, go off a cliff. Same as the car, but just the fact they were able to do it and still get the explosions and, I thought it was well done for 1933.
1933 was awesome.
Totally. It was pretty amazing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the cultural and historical context. So some of the notes that I kind of writ down.
You wrote them down?
Gosh, it's been like this all day. I can't even remember what I said earlier, but my wife was on me for something like that.
Can I make one more comment about special effects?
Yeah. Well, we're going to definitely talk more about them.
Oh, well then I won't want to derail you. Go ahead.
I just want to talk a little bit about some cultural and historical context for the time, and before we dive into like the special effects and stuff.
Sure.
So I think this movie was released at the right time because, late 1920s, 1930s, like we're really starting to see like a boom as far as like medical sciences and even like funding going towards colleges to carry out different research and things like that, right? So a note that I have here is this film came out during a time when scientific advances were both celebrated and feared, because not everyone had the opportunity to attend college or school to learn more about that. And so the idea of science going too far mirrored, this isn't all my words, this is from stuff that I read, but because you're going to understand why, but mirrored societal anxieties about the unchecked power of technology.
No, that's exactly how you sound in day-to-day conversation.
Thank you. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting that they decided to run with this, and it seemed a little more relevant for the time, you know what I mean?
Think about how many research projects the government did not fund because of this movie.
Oh,
that's probably true, huh?
There's probably some truth.
Like you scare the populace enough.
Yeah. Now, if the government funds something that's even like remotely straying that direction, they're like, okay,
or if it's like,
back off.
Or if it's like, how did they know?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Right?
It's like they see this and it's like, wow, that's a great idea. We've been
working on this for months.
When did Area 51 become closed off?
It has always been, and it always will be.
1934, probably.
Right around that time.
1933.
Right around that time.
2 weeks after this movie got released.
Let's close that base down.
It was a water park before then.
All right. Well, that's
cool. You don't have to laugh at every joke that comes up here. That's
just
fine.
Kind of some other stuff I wanted to throw in before we start talking about special effects. Let's talk about them.
Alrighty.
So, how did they make the Invisible Man invisible? We talked about this.
They shot him up with a bunch of drugs.
That's true. The experiments worked.
Yeah.
And
this was real life. This wasn't
Claude Rains was invisible for quite a time.
They dosed audiences up with a little bit of ecstasy before they started and some acid.
He wasn't actually invisible. He was blue.
Yeah. You here for the movie?
Oh wait, that's where the green screen came from.
So in order to film the Invisible Man, they obviously green screens weren't a thing of the time. So what they had him do was they essentially created their own version of a green screen. They shot all of Claude Rains, all of his motions in front of a screen that was made completely of black velvet. And then he wore a suit that was also like a morph suit that was also made of the same material. So as he started taking off, and then he would just put on his regular clothes on top of that. So as he started taking off his clothes, him dressed in this velvet suit would just blend in with the velvet background. And then they just took that footage and spliced it over the top of the footage that was filmed in the other scenes in the other rooms.
It's impressive.
Which is unbelievable.
Which is ingenious, and it honestly works so well. I think they could do it again today and it would still work.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
because
Well,
like
and it's
his
essentially the same technology that we use now for something like this.
yeah, for sure.
It was just we just do it digitally now instead of analog like they did.
And I think
Well, can you imagine like the precision of the people splicing it together? Insane.
oh yeah, well, and so time consuming. My goodness,
That's like some
Like,
tired fingers
If
cutting
you're
out
off,
those.
if you're off by millimeters, it's not going to look right.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
going to look right. But I appreciate the effort that goes into it because my wife and I talk about this all the time, and we feel like some of our biggest complaints is about movies is the overuse of CGI.
Yeah, for
Where
sure.
a little bit,
Like every Star Wars movie that's come out.
like every recent
Anything
Star
from
Wars
Disney?
movie, my wife rewatches the Lord of the Rings series every other month. She's a huge fan,
Really, that frequently?
like a lot.
Holy
lot.
smokes!
She's a big fan, and I think
That's why
one of
she
the-
won't share the password with you.
why she won't share.
Yeah, that's it.
But one of the reasons I think those movies are so good is because they did everything they could to use as little CGI as possible, from making sets to, all the characters in makeup,
Right.
and it carries out. And I think if you could do something like this even today and just put that little bit of extra effort into it rather than go the route of, let's just cover it up with some CGI, like I think that goes so far in the quality of a movie.
For sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, Jay introduced the movie to me, but The Witch,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
one of the reasons why I love that movie so much is not one thing in there is, computer generated. And the
Yeah.
movies like that I don't know. They're just, They're-
like Christopher Nolan, I know, doesn't like to use CGI in his films, and it's obvious. You can tell, and just the quality of the film shows.
it 100% does.
I'm convinced that bad practical effects are still more convincing than bad CGI.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
So with some of the other special effects that they did in this movie, as far as like objects moving or flying, most of it was done with strings and like piano wire.
nice.
So like the scenes where like the books were shoved off the desks and stuff, they just were tugged and ripped off.
My favorites were when there's something floating in the air and you can tell it's on a wire because it's like shaking,
Slightly moving.
Yeah,
He's got Parkinson's
Uh-huh.
disease.
dude. Like he also got that with being invisible. Yeah,
The scene where the first time you see the Invisible Man like unwrap his bandages and stuff, so that was actually filmed with they made a head shape with chicken wire, basically like the frame of a head with chicken wire, and then wrapped it so that as he unwrapped it you could see through it, and if it didn't move too much you couldn't actually
That's
see
cool.
that the wire was there.
that's really
So,
cool.
which is also, you can kind of tell that they did this too because the way his arms are as he's unwrapping it, you can tell he's unwrapping it not where his head should be, but on top of his head.
oh, they're like
That's
too
fair.
extended.
Yeah, so the frame that they made sat on top of his head. He basically wore a suit halfway on,
Yeah,
So the fake head is sitting up here, and so you can kind of tell that his arms are really far extended for his
why
head
he
to
struggled
actually be.
getting those.
Yeah, you could.
You can watch,
you
when
could
you're
see that,
watching,
right?
you can see it's like he's
having a heck of a
really
time.
he's really messed up. 'cause
not
he's-
having a good time.
Those should already be off.
I like when he pulls his fake nose off. There's a couple things about that scene. One, he pulls this fake nose off and then throws it at the town people that have come in. He's
Right.
like, how do you like that? Fake nose there for you.
like, you'll need that again.
And then he's also unwrapping his bandages, and he has a wig on underneath his bandages.
Yeah.
So he like unwraps a layer, pulls a wig off, throws it on the ground,
Which
and
is
then keeps
crazy.
unwrapping, which is just, I don't get it.
It's important.
I don't get it, Dr. Griffin.
He doesn't either.
The last
We've established he's a little out there.
It's beyond him even. So the last special effect I wanted to talk about was the final scene where they corner him in the barn.
Yeah,
And there's a scene where they light the barn on fire, and it's to push him out, and you see footsteps going through the snow. So in order to create that, they dug a trench, and then they placed a board over the trench with foot shapes cut out of it. And then the shapes that they'd cut out, they actually put back in, and then put a small, like dowel underneath it, each one attached to a string. And then they covered that all with snow, so that as the Invisible Man walks through the snow, they were just pulling individual dowels that were holding these footprint shapes up, and they'd drop, and then the fake snow that was on top would fall in the hole, and it looked like a footprint was being pressed into the snow.
A footprint that was fully shoed.
Even
though he was supposed to be nude, by the way.
He invented the invisible shoe at the same time. So
You know what's crazy about that though? At one point, because the Invisible Man makes a couple of comments throughout the movie, and he's like, "I'm so cold, and the only way I can be invisible is if I'm naked and I'm cold. Let's hurry up." Mm-hmm. But I looked it up, and an average dude with an average build in 32-degree weather, Fahrenheit for you that don't use Fahrenheit, you are, where did I put my note?
Which is 0 degrees Celsius.
So hypothermia starts to kick in after 10 or 15 minutes, right?
Which is not long at all.
Frostbite starts to kick in after about 30 minutes. So every part of him that's out there is getting frostbite. And then you pass out and go unconscious after like an hour and a half or 2 hours. So
yeah. And
So he's got real short windows.
so he's dead.
We don't know how far away the last 25 minutes of the movie he's naked, which is a prolonged period of who knows how
Could
long.
be 6 months for how well this movie told time.
Because he's following around Dr. Kemp or Mr. Kemp for the last half of the movie naked, and so for the half the movie,
Who knows how long he had to wait in that car?
that's why he got
Outside.
under the hay so quick.
That is true.
Yeah. All right. So general impressions of this film. I liked it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think like genuinely for the special effects that they did, and just the story of like what would someone do if they had invisibility? How long could they hold out their morality before they started to turn to, carnal desires?
Sure.
You know what I mean? I think that's a repeated scenario in a lot of different stories when someone develops an advantage over the average. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So I really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the special effects. I enjoyed his cackle. I enjoyed his manic 0 to 100. Yeah, I'd watch again.
Me, on the other hand,
No.
I'm a one and done on this movie.
I happen to agree with Ben.
No.
Okay, I kind of like what you're saying. The concept of the Invisible Man is awesome. The director, I would say, did an okay job for what they had at the time. Outside of that, not so great.
Oh no. Here I stand alone.
I think the only redeemable part of this movie are the special effects and directing. I think they're great. I think the set design was great. I think the special effects were genuinely outstanding for what they had.
Yes.
Unbelievable special effects. It was so cool to watch how they did things. And the only reason I would ever watch this again is to watch and enjoy the special effects, because the story was trash and the acting was garbage. So if I'm rating it, I'm going to give... I gave performances a 2 out of 10. I gave the story a 2 out of 10, and then I gave directing and special effects 9 out of 10.
That's so low.
So I think I end up at about 4.5 out of 10, which is probably the lowest I've ever rated anything so far. Oof! But
this movie has,
Awful.
just for a reference, this movie has a 7.6 on IMDb, which is
phenomenal
pretty good.
for IMDb.
Which is really
incorrect.
good. Which is incorrect.
Not only a 7.6, but an 87 on Metacritic out of 100, which is
That's really good.
frankly baffled.
Looks like I'm in the majority on this one, folks.
Yeah,
For the first time on this show.
Yeah, you're with all these armchair internet warriors who have decided to rate this and add their
These
comments.
Hollywood purists.
Yeah.
The only thing I can guess on the rating is they dug deep into actual critic reviews from 1933.
Must be.
Oh, they
And
went deep
added-
from ages ago.
They didn't put their own rating on there. They found the old ratings, because back then I can imagine people were blown away by this movie. So.
Probably.
Absolutely. And that's fair. And that's fair.
I guess. I guess it is.
That's all I'm going to say.
Guess
about
it's
that.
going to have to be.
I think overall, yeah, it's like a 4 out of 10 for me.
Oof. You're giving it something higher than that, Mitch?
No, I'm giving this a 6.8, like almost a 7. For real,
Why
though.
should we even keep doing this podcast?
Like, I want to watch this with my wife.
Why?
It's a great film.
Do any of the other classic movies from Universal.
I'm not saying it's the best of the Universal classic horror films, but it is still a good one.
I'd watch YouTube videos of maimed horses before.
I think this one's gonna have to call for a listener review, and you guys tell us who is more correct, me and
right,
Jay
everyone.
or
Write
Mitch.
us in,
and it's gonna be Ben and I.
write us
for
in
sure.
and support me.
No,
Give
You
us
don't
your
get
reasons.
anything out of it if
Wrong.
you support Mitch. Okay, if
Absolutely.
you support Justin and I, we will continue these
and
podcasts.
frankly,
If you go with Mitch, we're done.
if I see any emails come through that are in support of you for this, I'm deleting
Just
them.
gonna delete them. You're not even gonna let us read them.
No, I'm gonna delete them before you can see them.
If it says Mitch was right, it's
they
gone.
can't-
Don't even bother.
They can't stand when my ego gets.
This isn't the
fluffed.
government. We're not obligated to keep everybody's feedback. And if it's incorrect,
Well,
I'm going
they're
to get
not
rid
either.
of it. Well, that's true.
All right,
Yes.
folks. Well, there you have it. There's The Invisible Man. Go see it.
Or don't.
Don't inject yourself with
But
any
do
kind of
see it. It's a
chemicals.
classic.
It won't work.
Yeah, that's fair. I think at the end, this is a movie about not doing drugs.
100%. Mental health and drugs.
This was the
Not
original
only
Dare
drugs, but
program movie.
don't create cocktails of chemicals in your home and
hope
then
it works.
put them in your body.
Shoot it up.
Yeah, just don't do it. It's not a great idea. It never has been.
You'll turn into one of the world's biggest serial killers who did not make any ranking for serial killing.
Yeah, well, if our listeners want to know more or they have questions or comments, where can they reach out to us?
Well, you can hit us up at send us an email to hello@otherbrothers.studio and we'll check it out there. And it can be suggestions for the show, movies that you'd like us to review or talk about, things that we missed, or if you want to disagree with Mitch, we welcome all of those viewpoints. So go ahead and shoot us an email, and if you're lucky, we might even read it on the show.
You can find us on social media. Check us out on Instagram at Third Row Critics. Drop us a DM. Do you still drop DMs or do you shoot them?
You can't use the word shoot.
I thought you slide.
Alright.
Don't you
Well, that's
slide?
like if you're
Or
trying to
you're
like
getting into
be
somebody's
romantic.
Yeah, just hit us up on
Send
Instagram.
Hit us up
hit enter.
and check us out there. You can also check us out on YouTube at Other Brothers Studios.
And I do want to say, we did mention at the beginning of the show, but we have a sister podcast called the Low Grade Research Podcast, and we're doing kind of in-depth looks at all of these Universal monster movies on that show. That's a show where Mitch and I will use Wikipedia to dive into a certain topic. So those are all great as well. But this is the second of this series this month. Next week, look forward to The Mummy.
All right.
There we go. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And
in
not the
next
mummy,
week.
not the Mummy with Brendan Fraser, although that is great. But
It is great.
That
It's the
will
best
be
one.
on the
We've
show.
said that
soon
many
enough.
times on this podcast.
Yeah.
But the original one.
we're gonna do a whole month where we just review that one every week.
20-minute segments of the movie will be reviewed
Yeah.
once a week.
It'll be different episodes. It's not just gonna be the same episode re-release. It's just gonna be different episodes. All right, great. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Talk about an ending.
Whatever. There we go. How do we mention the mummy in every episode?